And so if we could, oop, it's being recorded now.
Sorry, so sorry.
Oh, that's fine. But as we grasp those tasks, as we figure out, oh, I can get this done, that really is a lot of what it's like. And when Sandy and I first got involved in supported employment some 25 years ago, and we were both in agencies that had large sheltered workshops, and now there's rehabilitation programs and other places with a lot of people all in one space. And people asked, how are we possibly going to get jobs for all these people? And the answer was one person at a time. And it worked. It worked because of the focus, because of the energy, and because the commitment was there. And it's the same with this process. When you're looking at all the decisions that need to be made, it's one task at a time. And that's how you move forward in terms of just handling the load, because it does seem, I think that a teacher mentioned it earlier, this information seems really overwhelming. It is a lot, but you're talking to people who have been through a lot. So sharing it, it's just good for you to know that it's a lot, but it's still one decision at a time, and then building on that platform for creating the next decision. So I wanted to start the day talking about self-determination and what does that actually mean? Because it is actually a concept and a term that is actually in legislation as well as policies and procedures for just about every service agency in Texas. I'm talking about not just the Texas Education Agency and our education services, but also Health and Human Services uses self-determination quite liberally all throughout its policies and procedures. Also the Texas Workforce Commission, Vocational Rehabilitation Services, you will see self-determination mentioned frequently. But what I find interesting is that when you actualize it, how do we actualize this self-determination? Do we even know what it means? And so I reflecting again on last week and how important our belief systems are, what our personal beliefs are in terms of how we make decisions, and how that drives us to kind of thinking through, are we even going to consider that as an idea? So when we think about self-determination, it's really based on that belief that every person's attitudes and abilities allow them to act as the primary decision maker in the decisions about themselves. In other words, I mean, to say it simply, is your son and daughter really involved in decisions about themselves? And that idea, that question really is the crux of both self-determination, but also some of the other decision-making tools that we're going to talk about today. Remember I talked about my friend Ricky last week, and he's the gentleman who works for Imagine Enterprises. He probably will join us on the 30th for a little bit for some part of the presentation. But he lived in facilities that provided 24-hour care 7 days a week for 29 years of his life. It was good in that he was getting the care he needed. It was not so good in that he actually had no real decision-making authority over his own life. He was very much the way that the system was set up, which is the intermediate care facility structure of Health and Human Services, as well as, the education services also gets involved in residential. But the way that that's set up is that if rules and regulations and all of the budgets, how money is spent, all of that is very, very structured and very focused towards the provider and what will be paid to them to provide those services. So when you think of the authority that you as a person who is living in that facility what you have control over is actually very, very minimal, because it has to follow this massive number of rules and regs and the other things that are actually, the state says, I will pay for that. So you can imagine that when Ricky received his Medicaid waiver, home and community-based waiver slot, and he was going to then be moving out of that kind of environment. And last week I referred to it as his Emancipation Day. He was pretty clear he was going to live in an apartment. What surprised his circle of support, and the few owls in that group as well, is that he was very determined that how he was going to live was by himself. He did not want to be in a place where he had other people living in his apartment, that he wanted his own apartment. And for a person who has some significant physical support needs, and as well as a person who is moving out of a 24/7 environment into an apartment, it was just like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do that and take care of all this? Immediately our thought is safety issues. What if? And we start, you can imagine the circle of support and people kind of thinking through all this stuff and trying to figure out, how are we going to do this? He did insist on living in his own apartment. It was actually his members of his circle of support that found his apartment. And he was, and in fact, it was how we devised the support structure, created some, emergency calls and some ways to handle those emergencies. And interestingly enough, we have never had an emergency in the over 10 years, well, since 2007, since he's lived by himself. But Ricky won that argument. He wanted to be in his own apartment. And that was truly there are many other examples of self-determination and Mr. Broussard, but that was probably one of the biggest, because his circle of support was so fearful for his safety. And so that, and yet we were able to come to some ideas that helped create that for him. But he had to challenge us and tell us that this is truly what he wanted. So I just going through these words, I'm going to share these with you. The first word, the anagram is scarf, in case you want to just off the top of your head remember. The first one is having the right kind of support. Without the right kind of support, you're not going to get very far. You need to have the right kind of support to meet your needs. And some examples of that is we would, I'll go back to Sandy's and my history, and that we were in moving people out of very congregated, segregated settings. And we would see for year after year to find and get a job, in the community, get a job. And how many times does a goal have to be written in a service plan and not be met, and not figure out that the person's not getting the right kind of support? Okay, so if you're going to have a goal, if you're going to have a mission that you're going to have, go in a certain direction, you need to find the right kind of support to actually achieve that. Confirmation is the role of the person with the disability in decisions about themselves, as well as the decisions about the service delivery system. This is the advocacy part of a person, both self-advocacy as well as going into the community and giving, or, going to the board meetings and saying, yes, the education services need to be, supporting the goals of the students, that we need to have those transition services in place, and are going to the local board for the local authorities. That confirmation gives the person with a disability a voice. Authority is authority over the services, as well, the resources actually that are allocated on that person's behalf. And for instance, and again, another example using Ricky is that when he moved from the ICF program into the HCS Medicaid waiver, his budget for the ICF is considerably higher than the budget for the Medicaid waiver. If he was living in a state supported living center, it would be 3 times as much as, if not higher than the ICF even. So it's much more expensive, but he was picking a method of services and delivery of services for him that is actually good for the state of Texas, and he's using what's called consumer directed services. But he actually has authority over the resources through that consumer directed services option, and that he sees his budget every year. He knows it's paying for his staff. He knows how many hours his staff can be are allocated. And he also has control over what's being paid to them. If he got a new staff person, he'd be paying them one wage. A staff person who's been with him for a long period of time will be at a higher wage. So he has flexibility in that. He can give his bonuses in that process. So authority over that individual budget, and it's a Medicaid waiver budget, is a big part of self-determination. And you usually don't have authority unless you are in a certain way of structure of the services. Usually the people who have authority are going to be your providers and the people in that service delivery system. Responsibility is based on your authority, right? If you have the authority to look at and devise that budget, then you have a responsibility to make sure that it's done correctly. So Ricky signs all of his staff timesheets. Edward signs the timesheets for all of his staff as well. They do have a person, I review Ed's staff. Ricky has someone that helps him with his, but we have a responsibility to make sure those funds are used correctly. And you can apply that to how education services are also rendered. Are we doing it in a responsible way? Are we using the funds responsibly? Ricky, when he talks about responsibility, he talks about he's got his own apartment. He needs to make sure all of his bills are paid every month. And he's absolutely right. That individual budget that he creates that is much bigger than the Medicaid waiver is because it has his own personal income. It's making sure that meetings are done, all of those things. He has a big responsibility to make sure those things are done. And last but not least is freedom. Right? Freedom is what everybody wants. We hear a lot about it these days in terms of our daily news because of problems in other parts of the world. But it for individuals with disabilities. I mean, again, reflecting on Ricky's experience, yeah, freedom's really important to him. He doesn't want to ever go back to where he was. His life has totally changed, and it's been an important part of growing and learning since he has moved into the community. So in a way that he has more control over. In order to make all that stuff work, yeah, you're going to have to take risks, make mistakes, celebrate it. And I think a big part of what we don't do is celebrate our successes often enough. And that we really know that the best way to teach self-determination is through those personal experiences and taking those risks. Ricky said when he gives his presentations, we talk about the dignity of risk. Yeah, give me a chance. Let me try it at least once. Let me try it. And that basically is exactly what he told us when he said he wanted to move into his own apartment. I think the celebrating successes are huge. We tend to be a society that or a structure that will look at a mistake and then try to correct. Whereas sometimes that positive reinforcement at the right time, in the right situation, at the right moment, that would pay off so much more than trying to correct errors that are made. So are we up in front of what it is that we're trying to teach or what it is we're trying to support so that we actually get that success in there and that we are kind of plugging in that positive behavior that we want? And discuss the outcomes. Make sure that the individual that we're working with gets it, and that they're seeing it and that they're knowing it and that they know that that's where they want to go back to. That's what they want to build on. So I'm going to talk about here's a little video of my brother, and here's a risk that we took. Yeah, that's Ed. And he is driving a boat. He loves, this is a huge risk, right? Because he's driving. a boat. And but he loves machines. He knows how to operate lawnmowers, golf carts, and he actually wants to drive. He would love to be able to drive a pickup truck, but he also knows enough to know that he is not going to do that. He does know how to put a key in an ignition and turn it on, but he'll be in the passenger side and kind of, he knows that when to do that and when to talk to the driver. This is a very safe situation. This little boat's called the Zodiac. They're almost impossible to flip or to sink. And this is a little 25 horsepower 4-cycle engine. And here he is driving away. Kind of cool. Beautiful day on Taylor Lake. And look at that face. He is content. Happy guy. Yeah. So with that little lead in, that's where we want to talk about supported decision making. And I'm just curious if anybody wants to share in the box if they've already heard about supported decision making or received any instructions around supported decision making, have tried supported decision making. That'd be great to hear about it. But it is actually a Texas supported decision making is across the nation, something that's been accepted as a way to support individuals with disabilities in making decisions. Here in Texas, it was passed in 2015, so it's not that old of a state law. And in fact, Texas, I think, was pretty much on the leading edge. Carla mentioned in the resource materials, the Disability Rights Texas, and we're going to see a couple of videos from that. But the purpose of the supported decision making is to support the person with a disability, accommodate them in making decisions about their everyday life. And again, we use that term self-determination. We are trying to create that situation where they feel supported, where we feel safe also, and in terms of them moving towards a their self-determined life, their goals, their ideas, their abilities. And did we have any responses, Sandy, in the chat box?
I am typing because
okay, great. So people are
yeah. Tim says that they share the ARCS version with the parents every year. And Alyssa says we discuss it during our ARDS with students turning 18 and still needing assistance.
Excellent. Well, I actually use this supported decision-making process. Ricky and Ed both have used it. But here's a little video. I'm not sure if you've seen this one before. It actually comes through the Disability Rights of Texas. So let's give it a whirl.
It was important that I raised both of my girls to make decisions and live in it.
Turn it up just a bit, Noreen.
But I think right now Timberly needs a little bit added extra support. It would be easier to make decisions for her, but that's just not the right thing to do.
My mom thought about guardianship, but then she was searching, and then she finally found supported decision-making agreement, and that was the choice to make.
Disability Rights Texas presents supported decision-making for young adults with disabilities.
My name is Tanya Mowat, and I'm originally from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Timberly has what's called velocardiofacial syndrome. It's also called 22q. My goal was for Timberly to be independent, regardless of whether she has a disability or not.
I'm Timberly Mallett. I'm 18. I go to Bed Heights High School. I'm graduating this year, and I really like animation. I want to go to the Walt Disney Company and be an animator for it. That's always been my dream job.
Often when students with disabilities turn 18, school districts and parents lean towards guardianship because they think that is the only option they have.
The only paperwork I got from the school system was on guardianship. They handed me a couple of pieces of paper and the information on guardianship was one. Once you obtain the powers of guardianship, you lose all right to marry You lose the right to vote. You lose the right to enter a contract. You lose the right to drive a car. You don't want mom having that power over you to make those decisions. To read the information on guardianship deflated me. When you listen to what the terms of guardianship are, you're stripping away the rights of that person.
With supported decision-making, a young person with a disability maintains her right to make choices and select someone she knows and trusts to help her. Both people complete and sign an agreement form.
We do have the supported decision-making contract in place. It has worked very well. We've been utilizing it for, I guess, 4 months now. We work really well together, always have.
My mom's always been there for me. She has helped me make decisions throughout my high school. She helped me with what classes to take, like with algebra, what to take it this year to get ready for college. And then she helped me make decisions on that. And then she helped me get through.
Throughout Timberly's life, I've encouraged her to have a voice in her opinion. I tell her constantly that she has a right to speak up and she has a right to be heard.
It helps me because I have a mom by my side always, and if I don't want it, I can say no. It's better than guardianship.
If you're interested in finding out more about alternatives to guardianship, including how to create a supported decision-making agreement, visit sdm.drtx.org. Or if you would like assistance in creating a supported decision-making agreement, call Disability Rights Texas at 1-800-252-9108.
Right. Yeah, we have that video and a couple of other videos, and but I wanted to also you saw in there the supported decision making. Y'all should have received that handout. The thing with the supported decision making is that you can go with a notary public, and this actually will also show up in some of the other forms. You can go through the process, and you can specify exactly what that person is supporting you, what the area of support is. The example I would give Ricky is managing his money and his property. He has an individual who's a member of his circle of support that helps him monthly on his individual budget. And so that is what will be, if you look at the form, there'll be a part that says managing my money and property. So there may be other things that will be no, but that one would be yes for this gentleman, because that's exactly what he does with Ricky. And the options after the signing is, and when we do his annual staffing, we just confirm with the gentleman that he will continue for another year. And so it's sort of like, yeah, let's go ahead and get this updated. And at that time, there will be, his case manager will be there. I'll be there. There'll be other people in his circle of support who can sign as witnesses, as opposed to having to go to a notary or having a notary sign it. So there are some other options that you might want to think about and use in terms of how to move through the form. Yes.
We have a question in there, and I think rather than me typing out a big long thing, it'd be nice for everybody to hear you say. They're asking, what is a circle of support?
Okay, great. Thank you. Great question. I love that question. So as a part of the person-centered planning process that we use with Ricky, with Ed, with the individuals that we serve and support, is I reference the circle of support. Those are those individuals and people who are connected to my brother Ed, or to Ricky, or to anyone that we're serving, so that they provide friendships. They're many times family. In fact, if we were asking our young students at our schools, that they're usually going to identify mom and dad first, and that being the closest people in their circle of support. But then there may also be brothers and sisters, and then there may be also other friends, like other students, other teachers. And we do include in that circle of support not just unpaid people in the circle, but also paid people. So the circle of support may include teachers, the principal, other people that they know who they reach to, but also medical, therapists, people that will provide services. In one case where we talk about transportation, we'll be talking about bus drivers if they're still in school, and most students will know who their bus driver is or the bus drivers. And so the circle of support starts with the individual and the people who are closest to them, but then it extends out to all the other people that touch their lives and provide a service or provide relationships, first of all, and then perhaps services and other things that they need so that their life is complete. So hopefully that helped in explaining that. Right. So a couple of other things that I wanted to share with you, and I know that you have the forms, and I'm going to just do this because the next little clip is going to be Dustin Ryder from Disability Rights of Texas is going to share some information with us, and he's going to talk about the medical power of attorney. And just so you know that is a way, a big concern that I often hear family members give us is the issue around making medical decisions and needing to have, a decision-making tool in place for that. And so the medical power of attorney is specific to that, the making medical decisions. The durable power of attorney is basically anything else that is very much the same as the medical power of attorney, except it's all the other things usually in regards to property. So let's have Dustin explain it because he's a little bit better about it. He's an attorney. So gosh, those guys know how to say things, right? Here we go.
When we think about supported decision making, it's just what Ricky was describing, someone who helps you weigh the pros and cons of making your decision. But there are other alternatives to guardianship as well. So here are kind of a list of main alternatives to guardianship. So a medical power of attorney. This is a document where a person indicates who they want to be able to make a medical decision for them. With a power of attorney, they can actually make that decision even if the person isn't, even if they were incapacitated at that time and couldn't make the decision for themselves anymore. Now, it is important, though, for a person to be able to understand that they're giving someone else the ability to make decisions about medical issues for them. Second, a durable power of attorney. A durable power of attorney is a power of attorney for everything else that's not medical. So there's a list of things on a durable power of attorney, and you can choose one or you can choose all of them, but it allows you to make educational decisions for someone. I work with a lot of families who have special education meetings. Sometimes the adult students still want their parents to be involved and help make decisions after the age of 18. A power of attorney is a way to accomplish that goal, again, as long as the young adult is able to say, yes, I want my mom to make these decisions for me, and then sign the power of attorney. So a declaration of mental health treatment is just a document that allows someone, when they're doing well, to make decisions for what kind of mental health treatment that they would or wouldn't want, should they be doing not as well in the future. A representative payee, this is for Social Security. And so a lot of people who are considering guardianship, the adult will end up receiving SSI payments, and the Social Security Administration can designate another individual as the representative payee, who is then responsible for managing the individual's money to take care of that person. And so that's an alternative to guardianship, because you don't have to obtain a guardianship to be able to receive and manage a person's Social Security funds. Now, for families who are fortunate enough to have additional funds that they plan to use to support an individual with a disability, there are a couple other alternatives. There are ABLE accounts and special needs trusts. So these are really only required when a family expects to be able to save money, that they want to protect that money in a way that the person keeps their Medicaid eligibility and keeps their other disability related benefits. So if you put any savings that are going to be used for an individual with a disability in one of these accounts, then it keeps that person eligible for Medicaid and eligible for other important disability services. So ABLE accounts are just bank savings accounts, specially for providing for the needs of a person with a disability, that Congress created these to make it easier for people to save amounts of money of up to about $100,000. There's some higher amounts, but they come with more rules. So for most people, this is a good alternative to a special needs trust if you're going to be able to save up to or less than $100,000, then you can just go to a bank, and much like starting a college savings account, you can start an ABLE account and no court has to be involved. For families who are planning to be able to save a little more money than $100,000 for individuals with disabilities, then a special needs trust is an important alternative to guardianship. And that does usually require hiring a lawyer to create the special needs trust and to designate a trustee to manage that individual's money. The important thing to keep in mind here is that a lot of families think that they need guardianship just for money management, but money management is actually one of the easiest things to accomplish for many individuals without a guardianship, because you can use the representative payees, the ABLE accounts, and the special needs trusts. Also, joint bank accounts. And at first, some people get confused about, well, how is that an alternative to guardianship? But a good friend of mine, his main need for support was in managing money. And the way he received his support is he chose a good friend to be on his bank accounts with him. And they created a rule that when he got paid, his money would go into his savings account. That individual would help him pay bills, and then they would leave about $40 in the checking account, and he would have a debit card. But he knew that if he wanted to spend close to $40 or any more, that he needed to check in with his friend who helped him manage his money and have a conversation. And the purpose of that conversation wasn't for that individual to say, oh, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't do that. It was to help him weigh the decision. So I remember being with him one time, and he wanted to purchase, and it was a number of years back, so it was an iPod. And so he called that friend, and that friend said, well, you do have that amount of money in your savings account, so I can move it over if you like. But you had also mentioned wanting to go to this event this weekend that's going to cost a good amount of money too. It looks like you can only afford one or the other. Which do you prefer? And the reason I like to take the time to give that example is it just shows what supported decision making is all about. It's about helping a person weigh their options, but not make a decision for them. And so a joint bank account is one way you can do that, because in their arrangement, if he had decided, well, yes, I want the iPod, she would have just moved the amount of money it would cost into the checking account where he could easily access it with his debit card. So the supported decision-making agreements, this is what we have now in Texas. We have a form created by law that allows us to communicate to people, hey, I want to be supported in my decisions and have this particular individual support me. In a way, it makes formal what people with disabilities have been doing for many, many years, which is to receive informal support from their friends in making decisions.
Yeah, I did cut this short. You can find it on the Disability Rights website, but I cut it, so I wanted to keep it to just that slide, to just that section, so that we can go on and kind of explain some of those things. But Dustin is in Austin. He's there, and he provides a lot of information. And I think he actually goes to the Dallas-Fort Worth ARC has these face-to-face presentations on a routine basis, and I think he goes there regularly and gives presentations as well. So thinking about one of the other decision-making tools that tends to be the one that gets a lot of the attention, or the most attention, is actually the one on is called guardianship. And I guess I did make a note while Dustin was talking, and so I wanted to say that before I move on to guardianship. And that one of the different distinctions that Dustin makes about supported decision-making and using like the medical power of attorney or the durable power of attorney is that in supported decision-making, the person with a disability, the person who you are supporting, needs to be there in the decision. Okay, they need to have a presence. When you're talking about medical power of attorney or durable amount of power of attorney, once that is granted, and you have that authorization, that person who has that authority can, in the circumstances that the authority is given, can make a decision without that person being present. And so that's a major difference between those types of decision-making tools. But it is done with the agreement of the person, and that they need to agree that this is a decision that they are making. Similarly, guardianship is a decision-making tool that once it is established, what it does is the person who is named the guardian then has full or partial decision-making authority, meaning they can make those decisions without the presence of the person with the disability. It doesn't mean it has to work that way. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily what's even intended, but it does give them that authority. And so it's very different in terms of how it feels for how it plays out, how it feels to the person with the disability, and who can make those decisions. The other part is the courts talk about the adult with the disability as being incapacitated. And that is done by assessments, by a process, and which I'll explain. I have a little video clip that explains it a little bit better. But of course, that guardianship is there to make lots of decisions that can include everything from money and medical decisions to even housing and voting. So it all depends on how that guardianship is created. If it's a full guardianship, or as it's up here, it calls it partial. Some people refer to it as limited guardianship. I did last week also introduced a website, and you should have this in the handouts that we as well. It's called Navigate Life Texas. And there's a little video in the legal department vision, and a tab of the website itself. I created a little clip that just covers some of the guardianship issues. So I'll go ahead and play this for a few minutes. Oops, sorry. I guess I have to play the clip. There we go.
I will be very honest, I was late at planning because I was in that little happy place of denial that my child was growing up. So at 17 and a half, we went and talked to an attorney about guardianship, because at that time, I really felt like that was the only option that we had. I walked out of the attorney's office realizing that that might not be the best option for her, because she walks and talks, she has opinions. I needed to figure out if I could get her to understand what a power of attorney meant, because a power of attorney, you need to be competent enough to understand what you're signing. So a power of attorney is where a person appoints another person to be able to speak for them if they're not able to make the decisions.
For example, one in which it would be very useful would be for medical decisions, to allow a parent or a guardian to access medical records, to speak to insurance companies, to talk to physicians, and to make medical decisions.
There's different power of attorneys. So there's power of attorneys for medical, there's power of attorneys for financial, and there's also, we've recently figured out that there's an educational power of attorney. So if you have a child that needs assistance in those particular areas, those are documents that can be very beneficial. If power of attorney isn't enough, if as a parent you feel like your child needs more, then there's also supported decision-making is another option.
It's new here in Texas, and it really allows the person operating with a disability to work with someone else, a trusted guardian or friend or parent, to help them make those decisions that are most important in their life. It is much looser and does not require an official giving up of rights.
It's a wonderful new tool that parents can use, particularly if you're just not sure. It's also more cost effective. It's expensive to get guardianship.
So for us, our son is 33 years old, And when he was 18, we were so clear that he needed a guardian. And so we went straight into the process. The month he turned 18, the judge was fully on board with it. He believed that Will needed a guardian. There's another lawyer appointed to represent the person losing their rights. And so Will had a lawyer, we had a lawyer, and we're all presenting our perspectives to this judge. And so he believed that, yeah, Will needed a guardian.
Limited guardianship is a little different from full guardianship because you can go to the judge and explain. Actually, first you fill out a form and you say, I think that I would like to have these types of guardianships over my son. And in our instance, we elected to have a limited guardianship that allowed the guardian to make decisions related to his living situation, his educational situation, and his medical. And all other areas were left to him. He was thrilled with it because for him, guardianship meant he would always be surrounded by his family and always have someone in his family who would be his buddy, who would be on the lookout for him, who would be his partner in life. He loved that concept. He's 29 years old. He still loves that concept.
I heard a financial planner say, when you're planning for your retirement as a couple and you have a child with special needs, you're really planning for the retirement of 3 people, not 2.
There's a limit of $2,000 for anyone who is receiving any federal benefits. And we knew from probably middle teenage years that that was something we needed to prepare for. I had a family member who wanted to set up a special needs trust in her will for my son. So for the last almost 10 years or more of Peter's life, I've been operating that special needs trust as the trustee. This is something that is extremely important, and it's something that you need to see a lawyer who's well qualified in the area of special needs trust.
The reality is, as parents, we're not always going to be here. If you start a little bit at a time, the hope is at the end of the day, you won't be as overwhelmed. It's never too early to start, regardless of what age your child is. Start planning, look to the future.
If you're living in a small town and don't have access to organizations that might be able to help you, again, the internet is a wonderful organization or a wonderful resource for locating the organizations such as the ARC of Texas, Texas Parent to Parent, and others.
So I am hoping to I'm planning on you guys taking a break at 10 o'clock. And but that is from Navigate Life Texas. That information is there. A lot of these forms are available through Navigate Life Texas, but you also got both the medical power of attorney as well as durable power of attorney and some of the other forms that were also available. So before we take off though for our break, I wanted to cover the idea of the Social Security representative payee. You can have these, you can even have guardianship, but you will not become a Social Security representative payee unless Social Security designates you as the person who manages the payments on behalf of the beneficiary. I've seen people get guardianship confused with, so they're the SSA representative payee and they think they're the guardian. They're not. And if they're the guardian, they think they're automatically the SSA representative payee. They're not. There are 2 different systems, 2 different structures. You have to go through Social Security's process to be the representative payee on the record. But when you are the representative payee, you are able then to communicate with Social Security about your son, daughter, family member, about their benefits and what is happening at that moment. And of course, as we work with you in terms of the work incentives, going through, the earnings that a young person is making and how that impacts their benefits and how to create the savings that are there, then that's an important process to have in place once you become eligible for SSI. And this is, for SSI or for any other Social Security. And there, of course, is the information that you can obtain at the Social Security SSA.gov website. Just put in payee and you should be able to find that. In your packets, you'll have also the form for the declaration of mental health treatment. And you'll have, last week, we spent a lot of time talking about achieving better life experiences, or the ABLE accounts. That was mentioned as an option for helping with those financial decisions and avoiding that $2,000 overpayment. This is an amazing website. It's a national resource center on ABLE accounts that you might want to tap into. We talked about special needs trust last week. And here's some examples of the differences between special needs trust and ABLE. Dustin mentioned the joint bank account, which is also mentioned in Navigate Life Texas as an option for working with the financial issues. And now it's time to give you a break. 10 o'clock on the money. So let's come back.
It's totally optional, Noreen. I mean,
Oh no, I was planning an hour break anyway, because what we have for the next, when we come back, is we're going to be talking about some going through decisions about around work, and we're going to be using this SWOT analysis.
okay, I'll get the SWOT posted in the chat, and you guys come on back at 10:05. We'll see you in a few minutes.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Noreen, your mic, you have an open mic.
Okay, thank you. Hello. Sandy and Carla, y'all just let me know when you think everybody's back in.
Well, we're at 10:05, so I say get started. Thank you.
Yes, yes,
What I
ma'am.
was gonna say.
All right. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming back in. And I thought this was just too funny to pass up that, but you know, it's sort of like how our world is. And especially when we think of equal opportunity and the idea of people going to work is that we're kind of held to this standard. It's like, what? I especially like the little goldfish in the bowl here and how he's going to climb that tree. Sometimes we set people up and for failure, and but we want to do is set people up for success, and that's what our intent is with work and how we move forward. And today I hope to give you some tools that you can measure not only what your contribution will be into those employment decisions, but also you know, talking about the service delivery system. Who's out there? What are they doing? We have a lot of resources, but are they actually doing what we need them to do? Are they doing that job? And so let's get started with that. And I wanted to talk about the supported employment model. And I was so excited that I saw Carla in February because she and a colleague presented on what's called customized employment. Those are very, very similar. They should have a lot in common. There are some nuances in terms of kind of the aging of the system of services, but both of those, this could also say customized employment to a large extent, and how that service is presented to us. But supported employment is actually a service within vocational rehabilitation, as well as a service under the Medicaid waiver. They are both defined differently, but the end result is supposed to be is employment, and employment that's receiving continuous support through the long term. The funding acts differently, and that vocational rehabilitation is always short term. Medicaid waiver is long term and supports, but they both are intended to fold in with each other, that they would support each other. And as a young person, as a young adult that's moving out of the school system, that both vocational rehabilitation and Medicaid waivers, depending upon what the person has obtained in terms of eligibility, may actually play into what's available for a person's employment. So all of that to say is, get a good team, get a good circle of support around you, get a good team, and help make it happen. If people are using the terms supported employment, then these are the elements that they should be actually looking at. It is supported employment and customized employment both have a huge discovery piece in front of it. That is getting to know the individual. What are their strengths? What are their abilities? What are they really good at? Where are we looking at in terms of that job? And then what are all the barriers that might be there that we need to kind of start working with? Supported employment is based on the concept that an individual with an intellectual disability will learn their job best in that placement of that job. So once you get the ideas about the person and the discovery, you think about job placement and ideas, you go out and do the research from the jobs that are available, and then you get that job placement and you train them at that job site in that environment with those people that will be there over the long haul, their colleagues, their boss, their supervisors. And so it's called place and train. It's a place and train model. Systematic instruction is actually what teachers do every day. They approach something that needs to be taught. They create, they know, and they create what are the steps that this person needs to know in order to accomplish that. Okay, so for some people it may be really complicated. For some people it may be, you know, it could be 15 steps for one person. For another person, they need to learn they could do it in 3. So they create that systematic instruction or a task list, the task analysis, and they train to that person and what that job is. In supported employment, we have found out through our research that the faster the job support person or the job coach, the faster they fade out of the job site and help create ways for that person to get the support they need at the job, whether it's a person or technology that's there or a coworker at the site, that the faster a person, an outside trainer fades from a job site, the quicker that individual is able to obtain their job skills and maintain their job skills, but they also have longer longevity on the job. They get more raises and they get more vacations because they're treated like any other employee in that job. So that idea of having that outside support person there at that critical first step is huge, but then fading from the job site is also a part of supported employment. And that seems to be where family members that I talk to really start to fall apart. They're like, no one else can be here with my son or my daughter. You know, we need to have you. and as educators, the educators that are on here, y'all probably kind of hear the same thing. What's going to happen after you leave? And it's that scary stuff that we talked about at the beginning. But we know that they're more successful when they're able to move into those job skills themselves, and using the natural supports and everything that's available. When Sandy and I first got started in supported employment, everybody would you go, well, what natural supports are there? And we'd always hear mom and dad. And it's like, okay, let's think bigger than that. Let's think of all of the other people in the world that could possibly act as a natural support. And that has to do with people like the colleagues, the supervisors, it could be another person, a neighbor, it could be a person from the church. So there are a lot of other places to obtain natural supports. So those are the basic elements of supported employment. It's a lot of fun. And maybe one of these days we'll do a training just on that, or customized employment. So y'all should have received that SWOT analysis, or at least a picture of the PDF. If you don't have a printer readily available where you could have just printed it off on your own, that's fine. You can, but if you do have a piece of paper, we will be doing or using the SWOT analysis in just a little bit. But before we get to that, I'm going to take you guys into kind of a little bit of a mental exercise, and that I want you to actually kind of put yourself in a spot that's pretty quiet, that you can think about this. And because you're going to have to envision the future. All right. So I'm going to do this by saying, okay, we just climbed into a helicopter together. How many of you guys have done a helicopter ride? I have. It's pretty cool. So if you haven't, it's pretty cool. But if you have, it'd be cool to know about it. But but just think about that. Think about climbing into a helicopter with a futurist as your pilot, and so you are in that, and you're strapped in. You've got your earphones on, so you can hear everything that's going on. You can hear all, but in general, there's just mainly the hum of the motors and the experience. But that now your helicopter is taking off, okay, and you leave ground, and you're going higher and higher and higher, but you are actually hovering over where you currently are in your city, your village, your town, your community, your country, if you're out in the country. But you are taking a helicopter ride that the higher you get, your time is expanding forward, and you are now going to think 3 years into the future, right? So as the higher you got, time expanded, and now you are 3 years into the future. So at this 3-year point into the future, look down, and I want you to imagine what you will see, okay? What will it look like 3 years into the future? You're looking at your home community, you're looking at your family, you're looking at where you live, you're looking at what businesses are there, what roads are there. Oh my gosh, who knows if they'll ever get the bridge over Kima finished, right? Or I-45 in my neck of the woods in Gulf Coast area. So you're looking at what's all there. Amazon's building a huge warehouse. I know that's going to be finished in 6 months. So you're going to be looking at your home first and where that is. What are the work areas? What are the work sites? So there's this new sports arena going over in another section. Oh, and they just built a new dock area at Bayport. So that's kind of in my neck of the woods, but what's in your neck of the woods? What's there? What's changing? What's it going to look like in 3 years? What about recreation? What's there now, but is one thing, but what will it look like in 3 years? The recreation areas and the school areas, the education pieces, what does that look like? And then you thinking about even what we do with on our weekends, the people who attend church, their spiritual growth, the organizations that they belong to, reading clubs, any kind of thing that's there, and you're looking down and you're involved in it now, but what does it look like in 3 years from now? And thinking about your son and daughter and what will that look like for them in 3 years. Transportation is always huge, so I include transportation in as many lists as I can. And thinking about leisure time, thinking about the leisure time, how you spend your time, what will be happening at that point. That will you have the kind of time you have now? Will you have more time? Will you have less time? What does it look like? And kind of taking off and thinking through that. So where is your son and daughter in that picture? Are they still at home? Have they moved? Are they working? Are they at home doing very little? Or did they end up in a program that you're okay with because it's something they can do while you go to work, but still they wish you could do something more? Or did they go to school? Did they end up going to the Texas A&M program? Did they end up going to Texas Tech or UT for the different programs that have been set up? Did they go to a training school through VR? Are they still in a VR service? Are they connected to other individuals with disabilities in the community through a self-advocacy program? Are they connected through organizations and clubs in their community? Do they have a favorite place that they want to go to? So create some little notes and write those things down, because you're going to be using that in our next step. So I'll give you just a minute if you need it. Great. So good. If anybody wants to share any of their comments or ideas that they have about just that little part, that would be cool. Go ahead and send us a note in the chat box. I think we can open a mic and you can share what you have. And that would be really, really fun to see that. But it does, I just want you guys to get out of your space a little bit and think, have we thought far enough ahead? And where's your son or your daughter? Remember that comment about when we were doing retirement planning, we realized that we were doing retirement planning, not just for myself and my husband, but also for in the video is their son. For me, it would be for my brother. And so similarly, when I look at that 3-year window, I would be looking at those kind of ideas.
Your mics are located at the bottom left-hand side, or maybe it's at the top, but where it says mute, you can mute or unmute there. Please feel free to come off a mute and discuss this with Noreen.
Noreen, we do have Michelle, and Michelle, if I am correct, you are a teacher. She thinks, I think in 3 years, not much will change, but if I go to 5 years, I see more possible changes.
Awesome. I thought, it's so interesting. And because I do use 5 years. And I've heard people tell me that it's too far out. That's too funny. So that's fabulous. So what kinds of things do you see in 5 years? Michelle, you want to go ahead and unmute?
Yeah, well, in 5 years, all my kids will be out of high school age. So I just know, I'm not sure exactly what it will look like, but I know there will be a lot of changes. And then I think for me, there might be changes with work at that time. Like I think there will be a whole reassessment of life and where I want to go and my family wants to go in the next stage, but not a lot of answers. Just, I know there's going to be questions.
Yeah, yeah. So more questions than answered, but asking the right questions is a good start. Thank you, Michelle, for being so brave to come online. It is an interesting design, and and Elizabeth, you raised your hand. So Elizabeth, go ahead and unmute yourself. Yes.
Oh, hi. So my son is 12 now. Well, he'll be 13 in May, so he'll be around 15, 16 in the next 3 years. So I'm hoping when it comes to overall, recreation, school, church, leisure time, that he'll be able to, go to like camps and programs independently, because I know our church has so many like summer camps that he can get involved in, but right now that's not part of our our plan right now. He's not comfortable, but hoping by that time he'll be able to be more independent. So he'll be able to maybe, have a small job and be able to go to camps independently. And when it comes to home, of course, more chores would be good so that I can help him with, work. And,
Okay.
but transportation, I don't know about transportation. I don't see him driving, but you never know. So hopefully be able to maybe get together some city transportation for him so he could get more involved in things. But I think that's how I see it happening in the next 3 years.
Oh, you have a wonderful imagination. Congratulations, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, that really is putting yourself out there. That was a lot of, to me, I was hearing a lot of risk taking along the way. And so that's absolutely fabulous. And I applaud every step that you took. So awesome. So what I wanted to share with you today is a tool that is a very simple tool and something you're going to take away with you and hopefully use. Is actually something that came from the business community, and that is called a SWOT analysis. So it's not going to necessarily be the kindest words in the world. I've had several people want me to change one of the words, which is the word weaknesses, but then I would lose the acronym SWOT, which is a very common tool in the business community. And this is what we use all the time when we are faced with challenges. I say we because we did a SWOT analysis on Imagine Enterprises 2 weeks ago with our board of directors. And so when you are looking at challenges, what's ahead of you, what's going to be out there, then it's a process to go through to help guide towards some decision making. One of the things I found in our supported employment processes that we put in place with like vocational rehabilitation, for instance, is that we created these massive assessments and paperwork process and all this stuff. The SWOT analysis is not about that. This is about answering some questions, just like Elizabeth was sharing, and maybe coming through with some answers, maybe helping figure out, well, how do I do that? So, and the actual boots on the ground kind of activity. So I'm going to take you through this process. And what I'm going to challenge each of you with is that if you were able to get to the slide where you could download the PowerPoint, where you could download it's actually 2 pages. One page is strengths and weaknesses, and the other page is opportunities and threats. If you were able to download that, great. You can use those pages. If you don't have that, then just get a blank page of paper and use it to write your notes, because you're going to write your notes about real issues and and about your son, your daughter. And in my case, you're going to see notes about my brother Ed as I share them with you. So let's think about this. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The strengths and opportunities, these are the really positive, favorable things we think of in a person's life, right? They're really positive thoughts, kind of moving forward kind of things. The strengths are our internal pieces, what we have within ourselves. The opportunities are external. They're the things on the outside, right? That we're looking at and going, where do I fit, right? So on this side, our weaknesses and our threats are kind of the negative or unfavorable, or the barriers or the challenges. I think that's the word that people have said. Can you call weaknesses challenges? And I said, then it would be Scott instead of SWAT. So, but what are the things that, again, this is the internal part. What can I improve on? What do I need to learn? What's there? And then the threats are the things on the outside. These are the things I can't control, or I can only minimize, or they're really things that they're the things I'm really scared of. They're the things that are out there that create the barriers that stop me from doing something. So let's go through this little process. If you guys have your sheet of paper, and what I want you to do again is to start thinking about your son or daughter, or your family member, or the person that you're supporting. In the case of Michelle, you might want to pick just one student, that you're supporting or that you might be challenged with, and think about that student and what their strengths are. Not only in terms of they're a happy person, they're a good person, or kind of some more those are behavioral, but they're pertain to any situation. I'm also really interested in tasks. What is the person's real skills? What are they able to actually complete? One gentleman I worked with collecting and assembling monster models was very interesting. And then the variety of sports that people might be involved in. A person keeping their room really tidy, neat, clean. Or I know one student that's always assigned to go and tidy up all the cubbies because he's the organizer and he knows what belongs to everybody and that this is where things go. A person who is really good with their money. They know how to deal with money, and money is something that so they're not threatened by it, and it's something that they're not that they're comfortable with. A person who may have cooking skills and maybe actually be really good at it, or cleaning skills, and likes to be engaged in that kind of activity, or has already learned other skills in theater and arts. So I thought about Ed's strengths, and so I thought I would share those with you. I know he can consistently, that word consistently is important, complete a 6-step task. That he can get to that and actually complete that and be successful. He's able to drive a golf cart, a riding mower, a boat. You saw him in the boat. He likes mowing grass. It's something he really likes to do, and he will do it for just about anyone. He's a good navigator. He doesn't drive a regular car, but he knows he can tell other people how to get home, and he can also tell other people how to get to other places. Using tools, he loves things like screwdrivers, hammers. He loves the big electrical what you stick a lot of plugs into, and he likes things that are electrical, but he likes zip ties, drills, saws, shredding. So he's a man about machines. He loves it. He can lift a 50-pound bag. He's a social butterfly. He really enjoys meeting strangers, and he wants people to be his friend. He has lots of sports that he enjoys, and he likes playing table games like dominoes, bingo, and Farkle. I don't know if you'll know that game. It's with the dice. So that kind of a list. So be thinking through that, coming up with your list of goodies. I'll give you a minute to do that. I wish I had some background music.
You could sing and dance for us.
No, I can't. So I did notice that Sandy said that these notes are for you, and you only share if you want to. This is to get you planning and thinking ahead. It's truly a wonderful tool. Thank you, Sandy. So give me we can do a thumbs up in the icons, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so if you get finished with that, put a thumbs up in your box and or in the chat box and get through that process.
You can find those reactions under using the little reactions icon at the bottom or top of your screen, wherever it's showing up. A little smiley face with a plus sign.
Yay, Elizabeth. When working with the Imagine staff and others in support employment, it's interesting because sometimes it's hard to hone down on some specific skills or things that are strengths. And so as we're going through this, keep more space there, because what's going to happen as we continue through this, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I forgot to put this. And so you can go back to your strengths page and add to it. I know I do that all the time. It's like, oh yeah, that's right, they can do that. And so go back to that strengths page. What we did find when we first started working using the SWOT analysis is that when it came to the weaknesses, that people could just kind of start listing things pretty well, pretty quickly. And that because we spend so much time in that world and trying to either mitigate it or accommodate it or correct it. So when it comes to a person's weaknesses, and we're talking about their internal, the person, who they are, it tends to be the one that we can fill out a little bit more quickly, and that we know those, and those are the things that go, that they stand out so much in terms of evaluations and assessments that are targeting, and it is a big part of our eligibility system as well. So there are several ideas around the weaknesses, and of course, I think we need to be honest about anything that's medically related. Speech is always, an issue, and it's difficult in communicating. Communicating can be, you can communicate in many different ways, but specifically poor speech was in this example. There's also a lot of behavioral ways in terms of communicating. Depending on others to make decisions, getting upset when there's really loud noises, or easily frustrated. So there may be things that stand in the way that you're just like, and you haven't figured out, how do I stop that situation from happening? Or I think that people have low tolerance for that in the typical world, or things that create barriers. Some of the things that I came up with for Ed and his weaknesses is he has a very limited vocabulary, and he's very difficult to understand. A lot of his communication is by gestures and by doing. And so, but that limited vocabulary. He is a person with an intellectual disability, but he's also a Jolaway. He's incredibly hard-headed, and he wants to control the situation. Imagine that, Sandy. So he doesn't want to be touched unless he initiates the touching. He needs reminders for his daily living skills. So as independent as it looked like on the strength side, when it comes to daily living skills, he actually needs that reminders, and that he can do them, but he needs that consistency put in front of him. He has limited knowledge about money, although he loves money and loves to use it. He doesn't know numbers. He needs icons, alarms, and reminders. He doesn't read time. He doesn't know up, down, under, over, before, after. He can't, or the names of colors. So you can't, you have to be careful about the tools that you're using and the communication that you're using, and understanding, and him being able to understand receptively what you're saying. He needs safe transportation other than family, for doing other things in the community that are outside of the family support. So
Maureen, I'd like to point out one of my strengths, and that was not answering your comment about the Jolloways being hard-headed. So carry on.
yeah, the acorn didn't fall too far from the tree on that one. So anyway, yeah, same thing. If you get through the weaknesses side of your SWOT analysis, then give us a thumbs up. Just take your time and thinking through what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so I don't see any thumbs up per se or whatever, but in the interest of time, moving on to, oh, there you go. Thank you, Elise. So the next part that you're going to do is you're going to look back at your strengths list. And again, you were creating pretty specific information about the person and who they are. And Carla, this might sound a little bit familiar in regards to the customized employment parts, but it's taking those strengths that person has. And what I want you to do is think about the strengths in terms of identifying the themes about the individual, about your son or daughter. Okay, or the student that you're working with. And what are their themes in their life as defined by their strengths? What are the things that they are most likely drawn to? A young lady that we're working with in one of our classes is very, very, has a lot of issues going on. But one of her strengths is having, is she picks out specific kinds of fabrics that she finds that are the ones that are both visually and tactily pleasing. So she is very, very picky about her fabrics, and she's very careful. And so that's one of her strengths. And so I would probably, thinking about that and some of the other things that she likes to do with her hands is having that idea of working with crafts and working with cloth or working with materials. And so that would probably be she had some strengths in that area, and so the theme would be crafts. In this case, the cooking. So you might have somebody in culinary arts, and the person who's tidy and always organizing stuff would be an organizer. A drawer or would be an artist. Swimming, bowling, athletics. Well, that's going to be a person who is might be interested in something related to athletics. But think of a theme, and this is kind of hard. I welcome any other ideas to this puzzle that we're creating. I will tell you Ed's opportunities that I thought of when it came to his themes. Remember we talked about tools and machines, so a theme of mechanical. things that have to do with engines and motors and mechanics, and he's operating things. He loves swimming, golf, bike, and bowling. And so the theme of athletics, being around activity and movement, and very, very familiar with all of those kinds of environments. So athletics is another thing. And then the next area where he has a lot of tasks and skills in is he can lift heavy objects. He's very friendly and he's very helpful. So the idea of customer service, he can help other people, which he actually does like to do a lot. And he did that in many, many volunteer jobs at the church for many years. But that idea of customer service really, really fits for him in terms of his opportunities. So try to think of that as themes. And if you come up with a theme for your son or daughter or one of the students that you're working with, write it in the chat box. I'd be interested in hearing what your theme is. Maybe art. Okay, he's challenging people, I can tell. So, but thank you, Michelle, appreciate that. Sandy, you can give us a theme for your two kiddos. And if you have any questions, please be sure and ask. If there's something that's not clear. Okay. So as you're thinking about that person's theme, and in the case of Michelle, she shared with us an art, and then okay, so Elizabeth adds, this is difficult right now, but I know my son loves to connect with people, even though he's at speech delays. So he would be a great greeter. Okay, very good. So he has that social component, that idea of interacting. Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. So, and that is good. I mean, it's good to know that that's there. You probably can expand on that idea. And as instead of being greeter, the theme would more be like a customer service, a person who interacts with people and does that easily. Oh, Sandy, the arts and animals, yay. The sports for David, and animals being another. Okay, huge, yes. Yeah, and of course that opens up a whole new world is when you're thinking of being with animals. So drawing an artist. So I would look at, then the next step that we're going to take is identifying nearby businesses that match the themes. So you kind of went through your task list, you know what the strengths are, you know what the capacities are, and then you kind of create themes. And the reason why you want to create a theme, and Elizabeth, this goes to you, is that you want to get beyond a job description of a greeter. You want to get beyond that position that says, well, that's what we do, we are greeters. You want to create a bigger theme like customer service, because that expands the possibilities in terms of the jobs that are out there. So Michelle, the idea of the artist, boy, I'm thinking of Michael's art store here nearby, the frame shop, Texas Art Supply, but there are also other like little gift shops and other places that will potentially use that kind of artist capacity in terms of how they see the world. And Ed's idea of like tools and machinery, these are all the businesses just in our local area that I know have machinery, and that he would be able to drive around the little tractor trailer with bags of dirt in the back. The nurseries that are nearby. Armand Bayou Nature Center has, they're always cleaning up something, moving something around. That's 2 miles down the road. Bay Area Nursery, the Lowe's, of course, is, that comes up a lot. Tractor Supply, gas stations, and just and how they operate things on their back end. So that would have been, and that all matches that mechanical piece, that being able to attract to the things. So then here, when you talk about swimming and golf and athletics, that big theme of athletics, the Putt Playhouse, Top Golf, Bay Area Golf Club, there's just all kinds of places to play. But the Taylor Lake Village or Seabrook local parks have lots of places, the YMCA, the gym, and he's connected to all of those. And then when you get to lifting heavy objects, being friendly and helpful, again, the customer service, we've got Robinette Catering, Arlen's, Kroger's Warehouse, and I just mentioned a few of the employment places here locally that are like within a 3-mile radius of our house, 3 to 5 miles radius of our house. So the idea being is that if you were working with a person who's doing supported employment, they should be able to help you work through the task lists. You are actually helping them work through the task list. What is this person? What is my son, my daughter, my student? What are they really good at? What is a theme in their life? And then thinking about what are those employers, and I'm not talking about actually, at this point, we're just identifying what employers potentially match this theme. That we may or may not go to that employer. There may be the other things we know, but we need to at least identify who are our employers in our community. With that in mind, then you can start to target your ideas of the conversations you have, the kinds of people that you might talk to and say, do you know F? And of course, not everybody knows the story from last weekend because not everybody was here. But one of the things that happened at Robinette, which is a place where we're a customer, is that actually Edward got to know the manager there really well, and she kept offering Ed a job. And so at one point when she said, Ed, one of these days you're going to work for me. And Ed goes, and I said, okay, great. How do we set that up? And so Ed now has been, except for the COVID years, because they were, the standards changed, but basically Ed's been going to Robinette 1 day a week for about the last 6 years. And it's a big part of their, it's a big part of Ed's week, but it's a big part of his week as well. And he always looks forward to working with Amy. So the last part is threats. And these are the things that stand in our way. Some of them are lack of knowledge or the need for long-term support to not getting what we need. But there's also fear from the outside, employers not hiring people with disabilities, concerns about liability issues. We may also get rejected. We may get rejected on VR services. You may be on the waiting list for Medicaid waiver services for a long time. My brother's threats, and of course, there was, when he moved here with me about 10 years ago, as well as today, there's basically a lack of trained staff to implement supported employment services at a typical business. So as many of you learned from last week, Ed has his own business. He's self-employed. It's called Ed Shreds, and that's what the business that he came with when he moved here. But it's called Ed Shreds. It's also created. He makes little things that he sells at market. And so we created his own business. We did not have the support of VR to create his business and to make it operational. But that's, it just wasn't here. So we found another way to go about it. And we now use the Medicaid waiver and the supported employment to support that business. But he wasn't eligible for VR services, and he was at that point on the HHS waiting list, but he is now receiving a Medicaid waiver. The other part of that is that the Medicaid waiver helped us with that transportation piece and find the reliable transportation. So we got through the SWOT analysis and all of those pieces, and I feel like I just rushed well through it. It is a little bit more difficult to do it virtually than it is when we're doing it in person, but I did want to share the tool with you. So I do have a message from Tim saying about posting the link and the handout.
Yes, we got that taken care of. I reposted it again.
Great. And thank you for the comment, Carla, on teachers, and the SWOT would be a great informal assessment tool too. It really is something to help family members kind of move through thinking about the individual of their son or daughter and how they can apply what they know in a really cool way. I know that as a supported employment provider, I would have loved to have a tool like this completed and kind of thought through, as well as identifying, man, those employers in that local community that you're already familiar with and that you would love to see if they could be connected to in a way that that would be a potential job in that local community. So cool. Are there any, I've come to the end. There's my email address, and also you have Sandy's. Ricky Broussard is the gentleman that we've talked about both last week and this week that will be joining us. He is an Imagine employee, and he does an incredible amount of work for us in self-determination as well as pre-employment transition services. So we'll be having him for a brief moment in our next presentation on the 30th. That's right, on the 30th. So it's not next weekend. So any other questions?
There is a question in the chat. I'm sorry if I've missed this in the past, but in regard to the one-on-one CWIC meeting, how do we schedule that, and do they contact us? Carla, do you want to start, and then I can maybe add our role?
Absolutely. I will drop the link for you to sign up for those confidential planning, one-on-one planning minutes. They are 60 minutes in length. And Sandy, you can explain a little bit more about what it is that you guys will be assisting, providing to those families. And I know for sure they're also going to be sending you information about any documents that you would need to have available for your time. So let me put that link in the chat, and Sandy, you can probably do a much better job of explaining what's going to happen.
No, I was just going to let you keep talking because you're like covering all my bases. So yeah, when you register, it's going to indicate how you want us to reach out to you, phone, email, etc. And what we will do during that time is we will go ahead and discuss your situation, just a few minutes, what are you hoping to get from it? Then we will send you a follow-up email with the date and time we've agreed to meet. It'll have a Zoom link on it. And we will also attach in that email a list of documents that we're going to need. One of the things that we will not do is guess about your students' benefits. So that's why you're going to give us some documentation for us to review prior to the meeting. So it's not like we're going to talk to you on Tuesday and then do our evaluation on Wednesday. We need some time for you to gather and get the information to us so that we can look it over. And after the meeting, which will be virtual, like I said, on Zoom, we will put together a benefits plan. So it'll be an individualized plan to your student based on the information you've given us. And then we will send that to you, and then we will go over it with you once you get it so that you understand what it is. It is a wonderful tool. Like I said, primarily this is for people who are already on benefits. If we get a lot of people who are just trying to figure out how to get on benefits, I will take over that training to help you guys get on, so that the folks on my team can just help you with those who are already on benefits. And like I was saying earlier, we've been advertising this now for the first 5 trainings. So we already have a pretty good list, and I assigned that list to my team this week, and they will be getting a hold of you if you've already registered this week and sending you an email with the information that you need to prepare for that meeting.
All right, and Sandy, I'm going to interject this. Okay, I did, you're welcome. I did put the benefits planning document into the chat, but sometimes we get emails from folks that we may not recognize. And so is it true, or is it fair to say that the emails will be coming from a name at at Imagine Enterprises.
Everybody that you will hear from will be from at imagineenterprise.org. And if you ask for an email, so that way you'll know it's us. If you ask for a phone call, we do have different phone lines because we're all home officed. So if you're like me and you don't answer, if you don't know who it is, we will leave you a message and you can call us back so we can let you know that this is about your one-on-one training that you signed up for.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
What other great questions do you guys have this morning? Well, I want to wish you guys a wonderful, wonderful weekend. A little overcast, but in my part of the world, it's not actually raining. So I hope that you guys get a chance to get out and do some things with friends or family. And we will see you on April the 30th. I hope you have a good weekend. Noreen, did you have anything else?
Thank you for the opportunity to present. Just loved it, Carla. Thank you so much.
And Elizabeth has her hand raised.
Sorry, just a real quick question. What age can we start the conversations about, starting to apply for benefits?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at SSI, there really isn't an age. We tend to work with folks who are more in transition around that 14, 16 age. I know your child is 12, but just happy to answer any questions you may have about what it means to apply at age 12 and what that eligibility is. Maybe rather than signing up for the one-on-one meeting, you may just want to send me an email to my email address, and then we'll set up a time and I'll go over that information with you, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, Noreen, I got to tell you, you've been my boss for 22 years, but you never cease to amaze me on how well you do when it comes to sharing information. And I'm stealing every word you said and taking it to Waco.
All right. Well, thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Happy Easter to all. And we'll see you on April the 30th. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Happy Easter.